Today, I'm delighted to say that I'm in conversation with Joanna P.A. Moore, author of The School of Villamor van Vaughan. And I'm delighted to get to chat with you about the inspiration for it, who's it for, and why you wrote it. So thank you for joining me today, Joanna.
Thank you for having me, Sue.
So what inspired you to write The School of Villamor van Vaughan, and why did you choose rhyme as the storytelling style?
Well, as you know already, my first book is a grief book, Love is the Gift, for children, supporting them through grief. And that's written in rhyme. And I love rhyme. I find it really engaging. It really does connect adults and children. And it brings an element of sort of like peace and joy. So it's a continuation from my first book to the second book, The School of Villamor van Vaughan. So I wanted to keep the flow going.
Love rhyme, don't they? I really enjoy it too, but children in particular love the rhythm of the language, don't they, as well? Anger is such a big emotion for children of all ages, particularly the younger ones as well. So how does your book help them recognise and manage it in a gentle way?
So obviously, number one, it's written in rhyme to be engaging and to be gentle. It's set in a magical school so that it can touch on the various areas of where anger can actually come up, because it can come up in different scenarios and it can be different reactions to different circumstances. So it's basically there to sort of support children and parents explore the variation of anger in a light way by having small little snippets of stories where parent and child can have discussions around anger. So I think it's just opening that space to have conversations with your child, which I think is important.
Which I think is crucial. It's all about connection and conversations, actually, isn't it? I mean, the book features magical students. How did you decide their personalities and the way that they express anger?
I paid attention to the various areas of anger that I wanted to explore. And then I kind of just went into thinking about different scenarios and stories and then created the magical creatures around it. I love fantasy. It's my sort of like go-to to relax. Ever since I was a child, that's continued into adulthood. So for me, it brings an element of sort of something a little bit lighter when you can have an element of magic in it.
Oh, I think so. Really lovely. I mean, how do you feel, or how do you want children to feel after reading the book?
I think what happens with children, and I think it's the same with adults, sometimes they don't understand where their emotions like anger come from. They are
Yes.
reactive, but they don't understand. And I think my biggest key thing is that when parents struggle with anger themselves, usually because they
Yes.
have unresolved anger themselves. So
Yes.
when their child is angry, and I've met lots of parents that don't know how to support their children through anger, they don't know how to regulate their children, and actually the adults are key in being able to support children through their anger. So the idea of having a story where you could look at collectively different experiences of anger, like Alana the Mermaid, that was for my first book, she
Yes.
features in the School of Villamor van
Yeah.
Vaughan as she supports one of her friends who starts to become very angry and nobody understands why. And eventually she realizes that her grandfather passed away. So the
Yes.
emotion comes up
Yes.
as an experience of feeling let down, betrayed, angry at the loss of her grandfather. So it just goes through different examples of how anger can come up, how you can work through it and diffuse it. And, you know, my hope is that when parents, carers, or teachers read with children, they can support having those conversations with children to explore their feelings around their own personal anger.
Absolutely. That was my next question, actually, about how do you see teachers perhaps using the book as a tool in everyday life in school? And you've sort of more or less answered that. But through reading it, are there any questions that it raises that supports teachers using it in school?
I think teachers are most probably the ones that are most experienced in having conversations with children when it comes to literature.
Yeah.
So I would think that teachers are the ones that are the best to pull out the particular subject. So, for example, there's one where there's theft of sweets involved, and there's a lot of anger both way from the person that had the sweets
Yeah.
stolen to the
Yes.
to the
Yeah.
young person that stole the sweets. And there's a big conversation to be able to have in that particular area if you are the person that has had something taken away from you and you become angry because you've been hurt and something
Mm.
happened, or because you feel ashamed and embarrassed because you've actually done something wrong yourself. So
Yes. Yeah.
it opens up the conversation. And I think
Yes.
teachers are quite well versed in being able to have conversations around literature with children. Parents, I think it's a little bit different. And I think what I would recommend to any parent is just sit down and go through each page and have a conversation about what's happened in the story. Does
Yes.
that sound familiar to their child? Have they experienced something like that? How would they deal with the situation? And can they understand how that particular person within the story feels? So it's just opening questions and having conversations, which I think is key.
Well, that's why I think the magic is in that moment of just sort of starting gently to ask some questions and then listening to the answers without judgment. You know, parents find that sometimes they rush in to change things or rescue or suggest. So actually gently reading it through and thinking about it before you read it with your child is a really great, piece of information to think about, really. I mean, the other thing, were there any challenges in addressing such a tricky emotion like anger? And why did you choose anger, first of all, in a way?
I mean, as a therapist, a counselor, I work with anger, and it's something that I find really interesting. And I find that culturally, it's usually got a big no-no around it. And I think that's why
Yes.
adults struggle to address children's anger, because they usually haven't addressed their own anger. It's like
Yes.
anger is not a good thing, so you have to hold it, you mustn't show it. But actually,
Yes.
anger is a natural emotion, and understanding where it comes from is really quite informative and quite helpful to sort of like work through it. I think another reason of why I chose anger, not only because I actually really enjoy working with anger and want to support like parents that struggle to support their children with anger, is that I recognized with my son when he was very little and going to nursery school. And if you look at Deborah the dragon in the story, that's
Yes.
actually inspired through my son going to nursery school.
Yes.
And he used to get really angry. And I was really quite confused to why he was getting angry. And then what I realized was that actually his anger was out of fear.
Yes.
So instead of
Yes.
doing what lots of children do, is cry and look frightened, which
Yes.
adults and parents really find very easy to understand
Yeah.
and work with, he got angry. So it took me a little while to work out what's going on. Nothing's happened, like nothing bad's happened. Sort
Yes.
of, and then I realized that actually he was frightened. So we had a
Mm.
conversation around that, and it made a massive difference. And I recognize in him, obviously, he's not a toddler anymore, but what I recognize in him is that when he feels frightened or concerned about something, or when he feels a bit sort of like embarrassed or a bit in shame,
Yes.
anger
Yes.
comes up as the first
Yes.
go-to. And it's
Yes.
really not an obvious one for parents. And I think with parents, it's really important to understand your own anger, because lots of parents dismiss it,
Yes.
don't notice it, or what happens is they get angry themselves.
Yes. It triggers them a bit, doesn't
Yeah.
it? And the interesting thing for me about anger as well, I've written about anger from a parental point of view and things, and also girls in particular are told not to be angry or not to show that kind of emotion. And girls can often suffer from, oh, that's not a very nice emotion to have, anger. But also Tell me what you think. What's the difference between frustration and anger? That was a really interesting story about your son. And that's a really thought provoking thing for parents reading the book to think about, is this anger coming from fear? But what's the difference in that sense, in your opinion, about frustration then and anger and how that manifests?
Well, frustration is an annoyance to something that's going on. I think anger is when it pushes beyond the frustration and you're not able
Right.
to maintain. That's
Yes.
my
Yeah.
kind of view on it. So
Yeah.
I think understanding yourself is how you learn to sort of, I know everybody likes to use the word sort of like self-regulation, but you
Yeah.
know, I think we as parents, we as teachers, we as carers are responsible to help our children regulate. That's where they learn the techniques
Yes.
of
Yeah.
soothing themselves, calming themselves down. So I will always say to parents, you know, if you want to support your child, first try and work out what's going on for you when your child may be
Yes.
kicking off or something's going
Yes.
down.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
like you said earlier on, parents really do try to rescue their children. And sometimes they do it because they can't bear seeing their children struggle or
Yeah.
hurt. And I completely get it. It comes from
Yes.
a good place. But actually, by going into that mode, you are not supporting your child to learn the skills they need to actually develop with the situation for themselves. So, you know, taking a step back, reflecting on how you feel, and working through it with your child makes a massive difference to just being reactive. Oh, I need to put a plaster on it. I need to take the pain
Yes.
and suffering away.
Yeah.
You don't help them learn any skills by not, you know, by not supporting, by giving them the answer. So working through it with them, like with books, is a really wonderful way
Yes.
to get children to
Yeah.
generate their own understanding and ideas of how they'll deal with a situation. And actually, if you give them the opportunity to reflect and give you the answers of how they think they would deal with things or why they think they're feeling this particular way, they give absolutely sound and incredible
Yes.
solutions and answers.
And
So
great insights. Yeah.
they do. So my encouragement would be is to sometimes take a step back, ask questions. You know, if you become anxious and angry, work out what's going on so that you can work
Yeah.
through that, because children are like sponges. They will
Yes.
absorb your emotion. If you're anxious, they will
Yes.
absorb it. If you're
Yeah.
angry and you think you've got a poker face, they will
Mm.
absorb it. So
So
it's a
right.
little bit of a two-way street here.
But isn't this intriguing how this all comes from your book? I love it because, that's why I love books, because they can really start deeper conversations and moments of sort of really considering how we handle, particularly anger for you. I'm very interested in talking to you now about the illustrations because they're very vibrant, those visuals. Was that important to you in the story?
Absolutely. I mean, being dyslexic as a child and as an adult, for me, the pictures were so important, especially when
Yes.
I was little and I really struggled with the reading aspect of it. So for me, illustrations have always created like excitement and a story within themselves just by looking at the images. So I'm so lucky to have Nina Mikoyani, who actually did the illustrations of my first book, Love is the Gift, and she's done the illustrations of my second book. And I just work really well with her. I give her an idea that I have in my mind, and she pretty much manages to pick up that concept and put it into the illustration that I sort of like envisage.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very lucky to work with somebody that kind of can manage to tap into exactly what I want out of my work.
And
She's
that's really
brilliant.
interesting that you are dyslexic and that you write books. I mean, that's so encouraging for children and adults and everybody too. I mean, in the book, do you have a favourite character or a scene in the book?
I actually like all the characters in the book because obviously they took sort of like a bit of fun and effort to create them. So
Yeah,
I kind of lived through all of them. So
yeah,
I do actually love all of them. But I think my little key one is Alana the Mermaid, because she features in my first book and then
Yes.
she features in my
Yes.
second book. So
Yes.
I like the idea of having something to kind of pull along, because, you know, I will be wanting to write another book. Most probably I will be going for something like anxiety. That's my kind of go-to.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And I would like to pull one of the characters or something from the last
Yes.
book
Yeah,
into
so
the
there's that
next one.
kind of, yeah, so there's that kind of continuity. That was my other question, actually. Are there any more planned? And you've just answered that. Because big emotions, whatever they are, whether they're anger or anxiety or fear, you know, parents need a hook, don't they? They need something to be able to bring that isn't too intense to start those conversations and to keep that connection going. So, if I could ask you to, you know, as we come to the end of our chat, what is the one thing you'd really like families to get from your book?
I I think what is really important is that families, whoever family members are, is to make a little window of time for your child. I understand that work might be hectic or other things might be going on, but actually to sit down with your child, even, you know, books can be expensive, but to go to your local library and get books,
Yeah.
just take a moment, even if it's 10-15 minutes a day. Sit down with your child, read a book with them, really take time to engage in that moment, being really present with them and having those discussions. I think that's more value that you can give to your child, I believe, than any monetary thing that you can possibly offer them, is a window of time where you connect with them, have good conversations with them, get to know them and who they are as little people, so that those relationships, as you grow older with them, are reinforced and strengthened. So, time is always the key. Literature is a beautiful way to have difficult conversations. It's a really lovely way to take it away from the individual person and put it onto something else,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
it doesn't feel as weighty and as heavy. And, you know, there's no right or wrong way of doing things. It's just about creating a small pocket of time where you spend with your child one on one, just letting them know that you care and that you're there for them. There's nothing in my eyes more valuable than that.
Well, what a wonderful message and what a wonderful book. Where can people find it? Where can they buy it? Tell us all the places that you sell it and where you hang out.
So I'm a bit slow to the mark at the moment, unlike my first book, but you can get a copy of The School of Villamor Van Vaughan on Amazon. You can also get it on my website, and you should be able to get it very soon at Waterstones as well. So it's in the process.
Yeah. So give us the name of the website.
So it's www.joannapamore.com.
There you go, because you forgot that bit, and that's the most important
Yes.
bit. I highly recommend it. I'm delighted you're in the Sue Atkins Book Club. It's a very important book, and your message behind it is just so important. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for your time, Sue. I really appreciate it.